What if everything you thought you knew about Archie and Lilibet was a carefully orchestrated illusion? What if behind the royal smiles, the christening portraits, and the official biographies, there was a tightly guarded secret so explosive it could rip the monarchy apart? And what if the proof had been hidden, not for months, but for years, locked inside a vault under Buckingham Palace, only to resurface just last night, with the king's personal signature stamped on the front page? You're not prepared for this, because no one is. This isn't a recycled tabloid rumor. This isn't speculative gossip. This is a reckoning. Let's take it from the top. It began with a single notification, a quiet update to the Royal Archives database, usually reserved for historians and credentialed researchers. Nothing flashy, no press release, no fanfare, just a timestamp, 11:42 p.m., Tuesday, and a single file name, Lineage Exception Protocol, 2021. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. That file changed everything. Within hours, whispers started flying across the private corridors of Kensington and Clarence House. By sunrise, Meghan's legal team was already on the phone. Harry was unreachable. And King Charles? He was preparing a statement. But the real question is, why now? Why, after years of silence, confusion, speculation, and denial, has the palace decided to finally break its silence? Why did King Charles choose this moment to speak? And what does this mean for Archie and Lilibet? Because what's at stake here is not just two children's identity, it's the integrity of the royal lineage itself. Let's rewind. For years, public interest in Archie Harrison Mountbatten-Windsor and Princess Lilibet Diana has been a complex storm of fascination, admiration, suspicion, and fury. From the moment Meghan Markle announced her first pregnancy in 2018, the world fixated on every detail: her body language, her changing wardrobe, her bump. But there were whispers, contradictions in the timeline, inconsistencies in the language of the official announcements. Do you remember the headlines? Why Meghan isn't delivering at the Lindo wing. Archie's birth announcement comes hours after birth. Palace scrambles to clarify confusion over royal baby's birth. What started as odd PR decisions began to evolve into a trail of inconsistencies, from deleted press statements to modified titles and redacted public records. And yet, the public was expected to move on, to accept, to celebrate. And for a while we did. But not everyone was convinced. And now the palace is admitting, indirectly and devastatingly, that some of those inconsistencies weren't mistakes. They were shields. They were walls. They were hiding something. So how did we get here? And why did Harry and Meghan, once heralded as the fresh, modern face of the monarchy, find themselves at the center of a firestorm involving parentage, DNA, and a royal identity crisis? To understand this, we need to go back to before Archie was born, back to the moment Meghan entered the royal family. And certain whispers began circulating behind closed doors. Whispers that some royal insiders believed Meghan had a backup plan, that her marriage to Harry came with more strategy than sentiment, that perhaps, just perhaps, Meghan didn't intend to carry her children herself. At the time, this sounded outrageous, sexist, racist, paranoid. But the whispers persisted. A midwife's name mysteriously removed from official documentation. A delivery ward that allegedly never admitted Meghan. A nurse who claimed she was transferred just days before the due date, under NDA. And then came the christening. Do you remember that photo? Harry and Meghan, beaming. Meghan holding Archie like a porcelain doll. The Queen wasn't present, nor was Prince Philip. The press was told the ceremony was private. But here's the twist. Sources from within St. George's Chapel claim there was no record of a christening that day, that the event may have been staged. Not for religious purposes, but for optics. And suddenly, a terrifying thought began to creep in. Was Archie ever intended to be part of the royal bloodline? Or was he someone else's child? Now fast forward. Harry and Meghan flee to California. Titles are dropped. Press battles ensue. The Oprah interview ignites a global firestorm. And yet again, when asked about Lilibet, the answers are strangely vague. Where was she born? Was the Queen informed? Why was there no public medical confirmation? Every answer Harry and Meghan gave led to more questions. And for the palace? Silence. Years of it. Until this week. until the king himself chose to upload a sealed document into the royal archives, one that included references to parental lineage anomalies and succession protocols. The final line of the document, direct review requested by the monarch, validated by 2 independent medical advisors. No names listed, no details revealed. But the implications? Earth-shattering. You see, the monarchy is more than just pageantry. It's a bloodline, a legacy, a legal institution with titles, land, money, power, all dependent on provable biological descent. So if there is any doubt, any uncertainty about the parentage of a royal child, it's not just a scandal. It's a crisis. And based on what the palace has just acknowledged, that crisis has reached a boiling point. But here's where it gets worse. Because someone, deep inside the palace system, leaked a portion of that file. Not the whole thing, just a page. A page titled Archival Review of Lineal Discrepancy, Case A-712. It included a timeline, some medical codes, and 3 redacted names. One was Meghan's, the second was not Harry's, and the third was sealed, completely blacked out. That's when Meghan reportedly broke down in tears. Not in front of cameras, not in public, but during a call with Doria, overheard, accidentally, by a staff member. She said, "They're going to take everything, even the kids. They said I lied." Is that true? Did Meghan lie about being the biological mother of Archie or Lilibet? Did Harry know? Or is he just finding out now? And what about King Charles? Why now? Why drop this breadcrumb into the public sphere after years of silence? Some insiders claim it was pressure from Parliament, a quiet investigation into royal succession protocols. Others suggest it's personal. That William demanded clarity. But the most chilling theory? That Queen Elizabeth herself left behind a letter, instructing Charles to address any unresolved bloodline disputes before the coronation. And that Charles, fearing fallout after recent backlash, is acting now, before it's too late. But even he may not be prepared for what's coming, because the next file due to be released allegedly contains DNA evidence. Real, clinical, sealed results. And once that's made public, the entire narrative, Harry and Meghan's entire family structure, could collapse. So why does this matter? Why should you care? Because this is not just about one family's secrets. It's about truth. It's about how far institutions will go to protect image, power, and legacy, even at the expense of 2 innocent children. And it's about what happens when the illusion shatters. Because now, every question that's ever been asked about Archie and Lilibet is back on the table. And this time, it won't be dismissed. This time, there's paper, there's proof, and there's pain. But what came next would change everything, and no one saw it coming. What would you do if a single document had the power to dismantle your entire identity? What if the truth about your children, their very origin, was being decided in a locked room without your voice? That's exactly what was happening behind the thick, soundproof doors of Buckingham Palace at 11:42 p.m. while Harry and Meghan were asleep in Montecito. Because at that moment, a mysterious file, labeled Lineage Exception Protocol 2021, was uploaded into the restricted access section of the Royal Archives. No password was sent. No official statement was made. Just a quiet update, and then a ripple effect that would soon explode into the most personal and painful royal scandal in decades. Let's break it down. You see, the Royal Archives aren't just a library of photos, speeches, or coronation gowns. They're a vault of secrets. Every medical record, every handwritten note between monarchs, every classified decision regarding the line of succession, all meticulously filed and sealed for decades, sometimes centuries. Access is tightly controlled. Only a few people, the king, his private secretary, the keeper of the Royal Archives, and selected legal advisors, can authorize a new entry. So when that file appeared just before midnight, people inside the system noticed immediately. And within minutes, word began to spread. Not publicly, not even to senior aides, but through an invisible network of royal watchers, whistleblowers, and disillusioned staffers, the ones who see everything but say nothing until they can't. Someone leaked the file name, and then, just hours later, a fragment of the contents. Let's be clear. No one has claimed responsibility for leaking the first page. It showed up in the inbox of a tabloid editor, typed in courier font, with a red watermark that read, Confidential. Eyes only. 2021 code A712. No subject line. No sender. No explanation. Just an attachment and a ticking time bomb. The editor didn't publish it. Not at first. They were too afraid. This wasn't gossip. This wasn't hearsay. This was the kind of file that could end careers, spark lawsuits, maybe even start a constitutional crisis. So instead of going public, they forwarded it to someone else. And that's where the chain reaction truly began. Because by 3 a.m. London time, 5 other outlets had received the same document. By 6 a.m., palace aides were scrambling to identify the source. By 8 a.m., Charles had summoned his inner circle. And by 9:15 a.m., Meghan Markle was sobbing behind closed doors after seeing what she believed would never surface. So what exactly was in the leak? And why did it strike so deep? The document's first page was clinical, sterile, almost, but its meaning was volcanic. It contained a table with 3 columns. Subject ID, maternal line origin, unverified, clearance status, pending, and in the first row, a code, MH1, Archie, 2019. Under maternal line origin. Redacted. Under clearance status. Inconclusive. Retest ordered by sovereign authority. What does that mean? Let's unpack it. That line, inconclusive. Retest ordered by sovereign authority, suggests that at some point in 2021, King Charles, then Prince Charles, personally instructed that Archie's parentage be re-verified. Not questioned lightly. Tested. Re-examined under official procedures. That's not normal. In fact, that's unprecedented. There is no record in modern royal history of any monarch or heir requesting DNA confirmation for a child already publicly acknowledged as part of the royal line. So why now? And what prompted it? Some sources say it began after the Queen's death, during the re-evaluation of royal roles and titles. Others claim it started earlier, in 2020, after a mysterious envelope was delivered to Clarence House by private courier. That envelope allegedly contained photos. Photos of a woman in Toronto. Photos of hospital paperwork. Photos that didn't match the narrative the Sussexes had presented to the world. But the envelope vanished, or so we thought, until the archive file dropped. And suddenly, the palace couldn't pretend anymore. You know what's strange? Harry and Meghan were never told directly. According to insiders, they found out about the retesting the same way the rest of us did when the leak hit the press. Can you imagine that? Waking up, coffee in hand, kids playing in the next room, only to find out that the monarchy, your own father, had quietly reopened the case file on whether your children are really yours? But it gets darker. Because this wasn't just about biology. It was about protocol, about lineage. There's a subsection in the leaked file labeled Succession Contingency Clause, code L7/B. It states, should lineage verification remain inconclusive beyond the second test, titles conferred under Section 3B of the Royal Succession Act may be subject to reversal or temporary suspension pending parliamentary review. That's legal speak for, if we're not sure who the parents are, those royal titles? Gone. Archie and Lilibet, Prince and Princess? Not anymore. Not without clarity. Not without proof. And suddenly, the stakes weren't just personal. They were constitutional. Let's talk about what this means. The monarchy is based on legitimacy, on lineage, on blood. And for centuries, the crown has survived revolutions, scandals, abdications, even wars. But it has never dealt with a DNA crisis involving a prince and princess who might not even be royal. This isn't just an HR issue. This is about succession. This is about the line to the throne. And if the children in question were never born of the bloodline, then every document, every title, every ceremony, it all collapses. Which brings us to the most disturbing part of the leak. A handwritten note, allegedly from King Charles himself. It read, "We cannot move forward until this is resolved. The crown must protect its line." That line shook Meghan to the core. Because to her, it wasn't just a statement. It was a verdict. A declaration that she and her children, her entire family, were now under royal suspicion. Not just by the public, but by the institution itself. Here's the twist. Some insiders say Charles didn't intend for the file to leak, that it was uploaded to the royal archives for legal compliance, as part of an internal audit initiated by Parliament. But others believe the leak was intentional. A warning. A chess move designed to pressure Harry and Meghan into silence. Think about it. Since the release of Spare, since the Netflix docuseries, since Meghan's PR appearances, the Sussexes have dominated the narrative. But this flipped the script. For the first time in years, the palace was no longer on defense. They had the weapon, the narrative, the proof, or the threat of it. And whether it was fair or not, the public started to ask dangerous questions. Why haven't we seen more of Archie and Lilibet? Why was Lilibet's christening held privately in California, with no press, no clergy statements, no royal representatives? Why is there no public medical record of either child's birth? These weren't fringe conspiracy theories anymore. They were becoming mainstream inquiries, because the palace, by releasing this file, invited them in. And now the floodgates are open. But the biggest question remains. What's in the rest of the file? We've only seen a page, a table, a note, a clause. But there's more. There has to be. And insiders say that what's coming next will make this first leak look like a footnote. Because the next page? It includes dates, medical affiliations, witness signatures, and reportedly, a DNA profile. But whose DNA? And how was it obtained? Some sources claim it matches neither Harry nor Meghan. Others say that's a misread, that the data is incomplete. But one thing is certain. The full release is coming. And once it does, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. So what happens now? Does the palace admit the children are not biologically connected to the monarchy? Do they strip the titles? Do they remain silent and let public pressure build? Or do they go nuclear and reveal everything? For Meghan and Harry, the clock is ticking. And for the monarchy, the next decision may define its future. Because what's about to be revealed isn't just about identity. It's about betrayal. It's about power. It's about control. But what came next, no one, not even King Charles, was prepared for. What if the very first official document that introduced Archie to the world was already wrong? What if the piece of paper meant to confirm identity, legitimacy, and lineage was quietly altered after the fact? And what if that single alteration set off a chain reaction the palace has been trying, and failing, to contain ever since? Because when investigators began pulling birth records, they didn't start with rumors. They started with ink. Birth certificates are boring, procedural, administrative. They're supposed to be the least dramatic documents imaginable. Name, date, place, parents. End of story. Except when it comes to Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. That story has never stayed straight. Let's walk through it carefully. On May 6, 2019, the palace announced Archie's birth to the world. A simple easel outside Buckingham Palace. Blue ink, white paper, traditional, reassuring. But within hours, journalists noticed something strange. The announcement did not name the hospital. No doctor's signature was mentioned. No time of birth was listed. Those details usually appear within minutes for royal births. Always have. So why not now? The palace said it was a modern approach. A new era. A private decision. And for a moment, that explanation held. Until the official birth certificate was registered. Here's where things begin to unravel. The original public copy of Archie's birth certificate listed Meghan Markle as Rachel Meghan, Her Royal Highness the Duchess of Sussex. Normal enough, right? Except royal convention does not include titles on birth certificates. Kate Middleton's certificate didn't. Princess Diana's didn't. Even Queen Elizabeth's original record didn't include her title. So why did Meghan's? Palace officials brushed it off as a clerical courtesy. But weeks later, and this is key, the birth certificate was quietly amended. Meghan's name was changed. Her title was removed. She was now listed simply as Rachel Meghan Markle. No announcement. No explanation. Just changed. Ask yourself something. When was the last time you heard of a royal birth certificate being edited weeks after registration? Never? Exactly. And that's because birth certificates are legal records. They are not PR tools. They are not living documents. They don't get updated unless there's an error so severe it demands correction. So what was the error? And why wasn't the public told? Let's slow this down. The amendment was made on June 5, 2019, almost exactly 1 month after Archie's birth. That timing matters, because that same week, sources inside the palace confirm a closed-door meeting took place between senior royal aides, legal counsel, and representatives from the Home Office. Not about media backlash. Not about Harry and Meghan's press strategy. About documentation. Specifically, about how Archie's birth was recorded and whether it complied with succession protocols. That meeting was never acknowledged publicly. But now we know something happened inside that room. Something that made officials nervous enough to alter a legal record. Then there's the doctor. Or rather, the lack of one. Normally, royal births list the attending physician. For Archie, no doctor's name appears on the public certificate. Instead, there's a blank space where a signature should be. Again, the palace claimed this was for privacy. But here's the contradiction. Every other royal birth, even those claiming privacy, still lists a medical professional. Because it's not optional. It's law. Which leads us to a disturbing question. Was Archie actually born in the UK medical system at all? Or was the birth registered after the fact? Now let's compare. Kate Middleton's 3 children. Clear timelines. Named doctors. Hospital confirmations. Media coordination. Even when Kate wanted privacy, the basics were transparent. Meghan's birth process? Opaque. Unverified. And increasingly inconsistent. And the inconsistencies don't stop with Archie. They get worse with Lilibet. Lilibet Diana was reportedly born in Santa Barbara, California, in June 2021. No hospital confirmation. No attending physician publicly named. No birth announcement from the palace. Instead, a statement from the Sussex's spokesperson. And when reporters contacted local hospitals, no record. Not publicly accessible. Not even a confirmation of admission. The excuse? HIPAA laws. American privacy. Except, celebrities give birth in California all the time. And hospitals routinely confirm births without violating privacy. Name withheld, details minimal. So why the total blackout here? What was different? Back to Archie. When legal analysts examined the amended birth certificate, they noticed something else. The informant field. The person who registers the birth. Traditionally, that's the father. Sometimes the mother. Sometimes both. In Archie's case, the informant was listed as the Duke of Sussex. Not Harry. Not Prince Henry Charles Albert David. Just the title. Which is unusual. Titles are not legal identities. They are honors. And yet here, a title was used in place of a legal name. Why does that matter? Because it distances the record from the individual. It creates a layer. A buffer. Almost like someone wanted the document to point to an institution, not a person. And that raised eyebrows. Now let's talk about the midwife. Because this is where things turn unsettling. Early press briefings suggested a midwife had assisted Meghan during labor. But no name was ever given. Later, palace insiders quietly acknowledged that the midwife initially listed had requested her name be removed. Why? Because she allegedly never attended the birth. That's not gossip. That's from internal correspondence reviewed by legal analysts. If true, that means the original documentation listed a medical professional who wasn't present. Which brings us to a chilling possibility. That the birth certificate was assembled based on secondhand information, not first-hand medical verification. And if that's the case, then the palace wasn't just correcting a mistake. They were covering for a structural problem. So why would the palace do that? Why risk everything? The answer may lie in timing. At the time of Archie's birth, Harry and Meghan were already clashing with royal staff. They were pushing boundaries, demanding privacy, threatening legal action, and most importantly, they were popular. Extremely popular. Any challenge to their narrative would have been explosive. So instead of confronting inconsistencies head-on, the palace may have chosen the path of least resistance. File the paperwork. Smooth the edges. Deal with it later. But later has arrived. And now those early compromises are being re-examined, under a microscope. Here's another detail that rarely gets discussed. The location. The birth announcement never listed a hospital. Later reports suggested Portland Hospital. But the hospital never confirmed. No statement. No denial. Nothing. And when journalists pressed the issue, silence. Hospitals usually jump at royal associations. So why the quiet here? One theory. The birth may not have taken place at a hospital at all. At least not in the UK. Which brings us back to that archive file. The one that references maternal line origin, unverified. That phrase makes a lot more sense when you realize the foundational documents themselves may not be fully verified. If the birth location is unclear, if the medical witnesses are absent, If the certificate is amended after the fact, then verification becomes necessary. Not optional, necessary. And this is where King Charles comes in. Because according to multiple insiders, it was the birth certificate discrepancies, not media pressure, that triggered the archival review. A legal audit flagged Archie's documents during a routine succession update. Someone noticed anomalies. Someone asked questions. And those questions went up the chain, straight to Charles. And once the king was involved, the matter stopped being administrative. It became existential. Imagine being king. You inherit a monarchy already strained, public trust fragile, and then you discover that 2 children publicly listed as royals may not have complete documentation verifying their lineage. What do? Ignore it? Or investigate quietly and prepare for fallout? Charles chose the latter, and that choice set everything in motion. Now let's address the elephant in the room. Does any of this prove that Meghan is not Archie or Lilibet's biological mother? Not yet. But it does prove something else. That the palace was not fully satisfied with the original documentation. That something didn't add up. And that instead of confronting it publicly, they deferred. Until now. Because now, deferral is no longer an option. The discrepancies are too many. The paper trail too messy. And the pressure, from Parliament, from legal advisors, from within the royal family itself, too intense. And here's the twist. Sources say Meghan knew. That she was aware the birth certificate had been amended. That she understood why. But she believed, deeply, that it would never resurface. That the palace would protect her. Protect the image. Protect the family. But protection has limits. And when legacy is threatened, alliances shift. So what happens when the very documents meant to establish legitimacy become evidence of uncertainty? What happens when the foundation cracks? Because the birth certificate discrepancy wasn't the end of the investigation. It was the beginning. The next step? Tracing timelines, comparing medical records, and uncovering a pattern that goes far beyond paperwork. A pattern that leads directly to private clinics, sealed NDAs, and a name no one expected to see. But what came next would push this story into territory no royal scandal has ever reached before. What does a prince do when the walls start closing in? What happens when the foundation of your identity, your children, your marriage, your place in history, begins to crack under the weight of suspicion? You call your father. But what if your father is the king? And what if he's the one holding the match to the fuse? This is the story of Prince Harry's private panic, a series of desperate, late-night phone calls to Clarence's house that the public was never meant to hear about. But now we know. And what those calls reveal about Harry's fears, Meghan's fury, and the monarchy's hidden maneuvers will leave you stunned. It started with a text, not a call, not a letter, just a short, blunt message from a royal aide to Harry's private number. You should speak to your father. Tonight. Confidential. It landed just after midnight, Montecito time. Harry was already in bed, Meghan asleep beside him. Or so he thought. But when he checked his phone, something in that message jolted him upright. He tried calling the number back. No answer. Then he rang Clarence's house. No answer. So he waited, pacing in the hallway, rereading the message, wondering what Charles could possibly want. Or worse, what he'd already done. At 1:17 a.m., the call came in. The voice on the other end wasn't his father. It was Sir Edward Young, now serving as the king's principal private secretary. His words were precise, cold, almost rehearsed. There has been an archival update. His Majesty thought it appropriate to inform you personally, in advance of public dissemination. Public dissemination? Harry froze. What are you talking about? He asked. A file regarding lineage protocol. It pertains to your children. It was uploaded to the Royal Archives 2 hours ago. Silence. Does Meghan know? Not yet. Harry hung up. He didn't wait to be patched through to Charles. He didn't ask for clarification. He grabbed a sweatshirt, walked outside into the dark Montecito air, and dialed his father directly. And for the first time in years, Prince Harry was panicked. You have to understand. Harry has always lived with a foot in 2 worlds. The man who rejected the crown, and the boy who never stopped needing his father's approval. So when Charles finally picked up, it wasn't an argument. It was a plea. What did you do? Harry asked. I did what had to be done. You're questioning my children's identity in public? No, Charles replied. I'm protecting the monarchy. And that's when Harry reportedly said it. From your own grandchildren? That line, we're told, hung in the air for nearly 20 seconds. Charles didn't deny it, didn't correct it, because deep down, both men knew this wasn't just about paternity. This was about power, and Harry no longer had any. Sources close to the family say that phone call lasted nearly 40 minutes. It wasn't explosive. It was exhausted. Two men, tied by blood and legacy, struggling over a secret that neither fully controlled. Charles admitted that the archival update had been pushed forward, in part due to legal pressure from Parliament, in part due to succession advisors. But Harry didn't believe that. He suspected something else. That William had been involved. That his older brother, the heir, had insisted on clarifying the line, even if it meant humiliating Harry in the process. Because here's the brutal truth. The leak didn't just hurt Meghan. It weakened Harry's claim to fatherhood. And in a monarchy built on blood, perception is everything. If doubt exists, even privately, it becomes precedent. It becomes justification for exclusion. And that's exactly what Harry feared. That this file, this lineage protocol, was just the beginning of a longer campaign to erase his children from the royal narrative altogether. After the call, Harry didn't go back to bed. He didn't speak to Meghan, not yet. Instead, he called someone else. Not William, not Kate, not even Doria. He called a longtime friend, a man from his army days, someone far removed from the royal bubble. And what he said on that call, according to a source who heard the recording, was heartbreaking. I don't know what's real anymore, Harry confessed. If they take this away from me, if they say I'm not their father, what do I have left? This wasn't the voice of a duke. It was the voice of a man unraveling. A father terrified of losing the very thing that anchored his life after walking away from the institution, his kids, Archie and Lilibet. Meghan found out the next morning. Not from Harry, not from a palace official, but from a reporter. She'd woken up to a flurry of emails and headlines. Her phone buzzed with breaking news alerts. One message, from a media contact she'd trusted since her Suits days, simply said, "They've opened the file." Her scream, reportedly, could be heard by the household staff in the back garden. She stormed downstairs, phone in hand, demanding answers from Harry. He tried to explain that Charles said it wasn't meant for public consumption, not yet, that the leak wasn't official, that they still had time to respond. But Meghan wasn't interested in damage control. She wanted to know one thing. Did you agree to this? Harry said no, but she didn't believe him. And from that moment on, the rift between them began to grow, not just as partners, but as parents. Behind the scenes, Harry began making calls to lawyers, to public relations firms, to trusted friends in the British press. His objective? Containment. He wanted to know how far the leak had spread, who had the document, what was in it, and whether it included the one thing he feared most: DNA results. Because here's what no one outside the palace knew, not yet. Harry had submitted to a private DNA test in 2020, voluntarily, to quiet rumors, to get ahead of conspiracy theories. The test was done in London during a brief visit under the radar. It was discreet, but the results? Never publicly released. Now, insiders claim those results were part of the archive file uploaded to the system, which meant the monarchy had proof, or lack thereof, that could dismantle everything Harry and Meghan had built around their children. And Harry didn't even know what the results said. Not anymore. He hadn't seen them since the envelope was sealed. And if Charles had opened it, then all bets were off. At this point, the Sussexes' inner circle began to fracture. Some wanted to go public, release a statement, reassert control. Others, especially Meghan, wanted silence, denial, a full-court press against the monarchy without directly acknowledging the leak. But Harry was torn. If he said nothing, the narrative would spiral. If he fought it, he risked validating it. And in between all of that, there was something darker, a flicker of doubt, something he'd never dared entertain until now. A question he had buried beneath loyalty, love, and blind trust. What if the palace was right? What if there was something wrong with the timeline? What if the medical inconsistencies weren't just clerical? What if Meghan hadn't told him everything? It's a brutal thing to admit, even to yourself, that you might not know your own children's origin, that the woman you love might have made choices without you. But those were the thoughts Harry wrestled with, alone, because when he reached back out to Clarence's house, asking to speak with Charles again. The king declined. He had said all he needed to say, and now the clock was ticking. That same day, Meghan received a legal notice from a London law firm representing a royal succession advisory board. The letter was veiled, but firm. It requested clarification on the following: the location of Lilibet's birth, the presence of medical professionals during both deliveries, any documentation affirming biological maternity, voluntary submission of medical verification to resolve lineage ambiguity. Meghan was livid. She threw the letter across the room. "They're calling me a liar," she told Harry. "They're calling me a surrogate." Harry said nothing. He just stared at the envelope, because for all his rage, part of him wondered, what if the truth is more complicated than either of us are ready to admit? And then came the breaking point. Another leak. This time, not a file, not a note, but a name. The name of a woman Harry hadn't seen in over 5 years. A woman from Toronto. A woman whose connection to the Sussexes had always been whispered, but never confirmed. Her name appeared in a redacted section of the next file drop. And when Harry saw it, his hand started shaking. Because that woman? She was in the same private medical circle Meghan had used before their wedding. And now, she was being listed as a material witness in the royal investigation. But what came next would make even Harry question everything he thought he knew. What if the answers the palace is now hunting for, the missing pieces to Archie and Lilibet's origin, weren't in Montecito or Windsor, but hidden in plain sight, all along? What if the scandal didn't begin with a birth, but with a list of private names, of rich, discreet men, and one mysterious donor? To find the truth, we have to go back, way back, before Frogmore, before Oprah, before the wedding dress fittings and the tiara drama, back to Meghan's real inner circle. A world where favors were traded like currency, where NDAs were more common than job contracts, and where the key to the most personal mystery of all, who gave birth to Archie and Lilibet, might just trace back to a leather-bound guest registry inside Soho House, Toronto. Let's open the door. For those unfamiliar, Soho House isn't just a trendy club. It's an elite playground, a private members-only hub of creatives, influencers, financiers, and VIPs, where the lines between business, pleasure, and secrecy are deliciously blurred. And in the mid-2010s, Meghan Markle wasn't just a guest there. She was connected, deeply, through Marcus Anderson, her best friend, her gatekeeper, her fixer, the man who could pull strings for everything from press coverage to private meetings with billionaires. And, some now claim, the man who introduced Meghan to a network of potential family planners, long before anyone in the royal family had heard her name. So why does this matter now? Because in the second archival document leaked from the palace, the one Harry was so shaken by, one name appeared in a heavily redacted field. Anderson M. And not just once, but 3 times. Each instance was associated with a different entry. Medical coordination liaison, prenatal planning, non-UK jurisdiction, third-party witness statement, 2020. In short, the palace appears to be investigating whether Meghan's Soho House connections were involved in the arrangement of her children's births. Let that sink in. This isn't about speculation anymore. This is a formal investigation, backed by documentation, endorsed by the Crown. And Marcus Anderson? He might just be the man at the center of it all. Let's rewind to 2016, before Meghan was a household name, before tabloids were camped outside her trailer on Suits. She was living in Toronto, mingling with a small but powerful group of insiders, socialites, startup execs, stylists, and a few mysterious fixers known only by their first names. Soho House, Toronto was her turf, and according to guest logs that were never meant to go public, she attended over 70 private events there in a single year. Dinner parties, wellness retreats, women and media brunches, and something called intimate family planning roundtables. That last one, only 12 people were invited. The agenda? Alternatives to motherhood, independent paths for modern families. That's not speculation. That's the event title, confirmed by a now-deleted RSVP screenshot leaked to a Canadian journalist last year. Guess who hosted it? Marcus Anderson. Guess who was listed as the guest of honor? Meghan Markle. Sources say Meghan was deeply interested in surrogacy long before she met Harry. Not because of medical issues, but because of choice. She once told a friend, according to private messages obtained in court documents, "Why mess with your body when there are women who do this professionally?" Controversial? Yes. Illegal? No. But secretive? Absolutely. Especially when you're months away from becoming royalty. And here's where it gets even murkier. One of the other attendees at that 2016 roundtable? A woman named Eva Delancey, a fertility consultant based in Beverly Hills, specializing in high-confidentiality surrogacy arrangements for high-profile clients. Her clients have included CEOs, fashion icons, and at least 2 unnamed senior royals, according to her own now-deleted bio. Eva was reportedly seen with Meghan again in 2018, months after Meghan married into the royal family. Where? At Soho House, Amsterdam, at a closed wellness retreat for new family wellness strategies. But no one photographed them. No one publicly confirmed it. Until now. Because Eva's name just showed up in the same archive file, in the appendix, under external parties, observed interactions. What does this suggest? That the palace is mapping Meghan's fertility network. That they believe there is a real, paper trail, or at least a testimonial one, leading from her Soho House days to the actual origin of Archie and Lilibet. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Even if Meghan considered surrogacy, even if she made early plans, does that prove she used it? Not yet, but it explains a lot. It explains why there are no traditional medical confirmations of her pregnancies. It explains the absence of hospital press briefings, doctors' names, or staff photos. It explains why both children's birth certificates contain anomalies. And it absolutely explains why King Charles might feel legally and constitutionally obligated to investigate. Because if Meghan did use a surrogate, and if that surrogate's identity was never formally declared to the crown, then the royal succession was compromised. Full stop. No matter how much Harry or Meghan love their children, no matter how well they're raised, the royal rules are ruthless and unforgiving. Back to Marcus Anderson. Who is he really? And why has he been so silent? For years, he was Meghan's right hand. He was at her wedding. He was with her at Invictus. He even helped coordinate parts of the Netflix docuseries, according to production insiders. And yet, when the archival file dropped and the leaks began, Marcus vanished. His social media went private. His public appearances ceased. And now, he's declining to comment. Why? Because, according to a Canadian investigative reporter, Marcus was subpoenaed last year by the UK government, specifically by legal representatives for the royal household. What did they ask him? We don't know. But we do know this. A follow-up letter sent by the palace legal team referenced surrogacy compliance, donor agreements, and witness testimony regarding birth planning procedures. That's not vague. That's surgical. And it points to a very real possibility that Marcus facilitated, or at least observed, a private birth arrangement on Meghan's behalf. And here's where it gets darker. Inside that same letter, a second name, redacted, except for the initials, J. For months, no one could figure out who that referred to, until last week, when a former Soho House concierge posted a now-deleted tweet. Remember when Jay flew into Toronto the same weekend as the Markle wellness thing? That was weird. He was asked to delete it. But screenshots survive. And guess what? Jay likely stands for Jessica E., a known associate of Eva Delancey and a former consultant for discreet IVF arrangements. She was working with a European donor bank at the time. And now? She's disappeared from public records. Moved. Vanished. So why were multiple fertility consultants, donor liaisons, and NDA-bound surrogacy advisors orbiting Meghan before her pregnancies? Coincidence? Or contingency? Let's rewind one more time. Before Archie, before Lilibet, before Frogmore. In late 2017, Meghan reportedly had a meeting in Beverly Hills with an unnamed female health advocate and a female medical liaison from Toronto. The meeting was booked through a third party. No press, no photos, but logs obtained by an anonymous staffer at the time list the purpose of the meeting as prenatal legal strategy, confidential family planning, HIPAA-compliant arrangements. It was less than 6 months before Meghan's wedding to Harry. It was marked as urgent, and it may be the missing piece the palace has been looking for. So what does all of this mean? It means Meghan's past is no longer just a PR problem. It's now a legal puzzle, a constitutional one. And the palace? They're connecting the dots. Every Soho House invite, every fertility liaison, every NDA, every donor, every flight. Because if even one link in that chain proves Meghan arranged a surrogate birth and failed to disclose it to the crown, then Archie and Lilibet's claim to titles, protection, and succession rights shatters. And it won't matter how much the public loves them. It won't matter how much Harry protests. The law is the law, and the crown always defends its bloodline. What happens next? The palace is reportedly reviewing Soho House guest logs, interviewing staff, subpoenaing former medical coordinators. And that woman from Toronto? The one whose name appeared in the archive file? She's been spotted entering a private law office in London. She hasn't spoken publicly, but she's cooperating. And what she knows could reshape the royal family's future. Because what came next would bring the entire House of Windsor to the edge of collapse. Where was Lilibet Diana really born? It's a simple question, one that should have a simple answer. But in the world of royalty, image, and power, the simplest questions are often the most dangerous. Because when it comes to Meghan and Harry's second child, nothing is straightforward. No hospital confirmations, no attending physician interviews, no photographic evidence, no official records released to the public, not even a blurry paparazzi photo outside a maternity ward. Just a carefully crafted press release and a silence so deafening, it raised more questions than it answered. So let's ask the uncomfortable question. Was Lilibet really born where they claimed? Or has the world been misled? And if so, why? What is so sensitive, so explosive, about Lilibet's true birthplace that the palace, Meghan, and even Harry would go to such great lengths to keep it hidden? Let's peel back the layers. The official line, repeated by Harry and Meghan's press team, is this: Lilibet Diana Mountbatten-Windsor was born on June 4, 2021, at Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital in California. A quaint, upmarket facility with ocean views, top-tier security, and a reputation for celebrity discretion. Sounds plausible, right? Except for one tiny problem. The hospital never confirmed it. Not publicly. Not even once. And when reporters reached out to verify the birth, with no expectation of receiving personal details, just a simple yes or no confirmation, they were stonewalled. The hospital declined to comment. No press release. No acknowledgement. Just silence. Unusual? Absolutely. This is the same facility that once confirmed high-profile celebrity births, from models to musicians, always respecting privacy, but always confirming the basics. But for Lilibet? Nothing. Why? Let's rewind to the day of Lilibet's birth. June 4, 2021. There was no media presence outside the hospital. No ambulance sightings. No black SUVs. No blurred photos of Harry pacing nervously on the hospital steps. Even TMZ, which rarely misses a birth story, had nothing. That's strange. This is the daughter of a prince. A royal child born in the US. A potential constitutional first. There should have been something. But there wasn't. Because, as we now know, the media didn't even know she had been born until 2 days later. That's right. Harry and Meghan waited 48 hours before releasing the news. In that time, no one saw Meghan leave her Montecito estate. No one saw her admitted into Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. No medical staff posted anything. No insider leaks. Not even a whisper. That level of secrecy requires more than luck. It requires planning. It requires control. And it raises a terrifying possibility. That Lilibet may not have been born in Santa Barbara at all. That she may not have been born in California. That she may not have been born in the United States. Now we get to the evidence. First, flight logs. Investigative journalists tracking private aviation movements noticed something odd. On the night of June 3, 2021, just hours before Lilibet's supposed birth, a private medical-equipped jet flew from Toronto Pearson International Airport to a small airstrip near Montecito. The plane was registered to a Canadian private medical transport company. On board, 2 flight crew members, 1 medical liaison, and a female passenger listed only as Client A. No names, no baggage, no customs photos, just a 3-hour turnaround. The same jet departed back to Toronto on June 5th, the day after Lilibet was reportedly born. Coincidence? Maybe. But here's where it gets worse. The passenger manifest was sealed under a privacy clause, but someone leaked the passenger weight logs. And the outgoing flight from Santa Barbara listed 3 passengers, not 2. 1 female, One infant. One assistant. The timing matches perfectly. Too perfectly. Second, local footage. A security camera at a nearby gas station, about 5 miles from Harry and Meghan's estate, recorded an unusual vehicle convoy on June 3rd around 10:47 p.m. 3 black SUVs, one with tinted rear windows, accompanied by a trailing van with California Department of Health markings. When analysts reviewed the footage, they spotted something strange. The convoy turned away from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital, not toward it. Instead, it headed toward an unmarked, high-security estate, rumored to be used for private medical procedures. That estate is registered to a shell company linked to a known Soho House donor. Let that sink in. A birth-related convoy. At night. Not heading to a hospital, but to a private estate. Hours before Lilibet was born. And no one has explained why. Third, the birth certificate. You'd think that, after the controversy around Archie's birth record, Harry and Meghan would make Lilibet's documentation watertight. But the opposite happened. Lilibet's birth certificate wasn't filed until 11 days after her birth. Late, even by celebrity standards. And when it was finally released, it contained another anomaly. The birth was registered by a representative, not by Harry or Meghan themselves. Why? If they were in Santa Barbara, why wouldn't one of the parents sign? And more importantly, why was the certificate filed via an attorney's office in Los Angeles, not directly through Santa Barbara's registrar? Legal experts say this suggests the birth may have occurred outside the jurisdiction and required legal importation into California records. In plain English, that certificate may not be native to California. It may have been retroactively filed. Paperwork that makes it appear as though the birth occurred locally, even if it didn't. That's not illegal, but it is misleading, and it raises further red flags about Meghan and Harry's transparency. So where was Lilibet born? And why the elaborate cover? There are 3 theories circulating behind closed doors at the palace, each more unsettling than the last. Theory 1, the surrogacy theory. Lilibet was born via surrogate, not in California, but in Canada, possibly at a private birthing facility connected to one of Meghan's known medical liaisons. The surrogate then handed off the child, who was flown into California and presented as Meghan's. This would explain the medical jet, the lack of hospital confirmation, the delayed birth certificate, the absence of any postpartum photos of Meghan, the bizarre silence from Santa Barbara Cottage Hospital. But if this is true, it also means Lilibet's royal identity was based on a falsehood. And that's a constitutional issue. Theory 2, the quiet home birth theory. Some believe Lilibet was born at Meghan and Harry's estate, a planned, ultra-private home birth with no official oversight. Sounds romantic? Not quite. Home births in California must still be registered with a licensed midwife or physician. Yet, no such person has come forward. And given the alleged presence of a Department of Health van, this theory is shaky. If it were a home birth, why the need for such official escort secrecy? Theory 3, the Toronto switch theory. This is the most controversial. It suggests that Lilibet was not born to Meghan at all, but to a surrogate in Toronto. That the child was never in California until after the birth. That all documentation was backdated and legally filed after the handoff occurred. It sounds extreme. But remember, the palace is currently investigating documents involving Marcus Anderson, fertility consultants in Canada, and travel logs that show Harry making secret visits to Toronto in 2020 and 2021. If this theory is true, it's not just a question of birthplace. It's a question of parentage. And the palace knows it. So why all the secrecy? Why not just tell the public the truth? Because Meghan and Harry were walking a tightrope. They had to balance their version of privacy with the palace's expectation of protocol. And somewhere along the line, they lost control. By the time they realized that the press, the palace, and the public were circling, it was too late. The birth had happened. The lie, if there was one, had taken root. And unraveling it now would be devastating. Not just to them, but to their children. But here's what changed everything. 3 weeks ago, a customs officer in Toronto anonymously submitted a report. The report claimed that an infant entered the U.S. from Canada on June 5, 2021, under a private medical exemption. The infant had no listed parents, only a guardian in transit. The flight? Same medical jet spotted near Montecito. The customs officer said the name on the tag was smudged. But the initials? LDMW. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor. That report, what if the truth about Archie and Lilibet's parentage had never been spoken aloud, because it was buried beneath a wall of ironclad contracts, non-disclosure clauses, and offshore payments? What if the most explosive royal scandal in a century wasn't built on rumors, but on paperwork? Because deep in a sealed legal vault in Beverly Hills, and quietly referenced in the latest Royal Archive leak, there exists something that changes everything. A document Meghan Markle swore would never surface. A document Harry may have never seen. A document that proves the existence of a third party, a woman whose name has been redacted from every version of the file. That document? A private surrogacy agreement. Signed, sealed, and now, dangerously close to being revealed. Let's dive in. So far, we've followed the whispers. Strange birth certificates, missing hospital records, secret flights, and mysterious fertility consultants from Meghan's Soho House past. But now we've found the receipts. Literal ones. In the form of wire transfers, witness signatures, and legal language so tightly constructed, it makes you wonder if this plan was always meant to stay hidden forever. But nothing hidden stays buried in the age of leaks. And according to multiple palace sources, a third-party law firm, operating out of Beverly Hills under the alias Strathmore and Company, drew up a confidential gestational agreement in early 2018. The document outlines an arrangement between the intended parents, the gestational carrier, the legal coordinator, the medical facilitator, but the names? All redacted, except two signatures, one marked RMM and the other MA. Rachel Meghan Markle, Marcus Anderson. The implications? Devastating. Because this wasn't some last-minute decision. This was pre-planned, months before Meghan was officially pregnant, possibly before the engagement was even announced. Let's be clear, surrogacy itself is not scandalous. Thousands of families, high-profile and private, use surrogates every year. What is scandalous is when surrogacy is used secretly, while the world, and the monarchy, is told otherwise, especially when the child in question is in line to inherit royal titles, roles, and responsibilities. That's when legalities become constitutional. And that's where this story goes nuclear. Because within this agreement, according to legal analysts who reviewed a leaked summary, were three clauses that sent shockwaves through Clarence House. Let's break them down. Clause 1. Complete anonymity of gestational carrier. The surrogate was to remain 100% confidential, not just during the pregnancy, but for life. No interviews, no statements, no acknowledgement. Violation would result in immediate forfeiture of payment and a legal injunction to prevent disclosure. In short, the woman who carried Archie, if this document is indeed connected to him, was paid not just for her service, but for her silence. The payment? An alleged $5 million disbursed in increments via offshore accounts over 14 months. No trail, no name, just silence. Clause 2. Ownership of birth narrative. This one stunned royal legal advisors. The intended parents retained full control over how, when, and if the birth would be disclosed to the public. The agreement stated, all public references to gestation, delivery, or recovery shall reflect the intended parent's preferred narrative. All physical depictions may be staged, delayed, or omitted. Translation? They could present the pregnancy however they wanted. Baby bump? Staged. Hospital visit? Optional. Post-birth photo op? Not required. And because no public institution was formally tied to the birth, no hospital records, no press pool, no one could prove otherwise. Unless the agreement surfaced. Which is exactly what has just happened. Clause 3. Jurisdictional loopholes. This clause was so intricate, it took legal experts several days to decode it. It essentially split the surrogacy process across multiple countries to avoid full disclosure laws in any single jurisdiction. How? The fertilization was reportedly done in Switzerland, where IVF privacy laws are robust. The carrier resided in Canada, where medical confidentiality is strong. The birth, if connected to Archie, was allegedly facilitated on private property, avoiding hospital documentation. The legal registration occurred in California, using a favorable statute for surrogacy agreements that does not require public notarization. Each part of the process was legal. Each location had protections. But when combined, they created a perfect storm of plausible deniability. And that's what makes this agreement so powerful and so dangerous. Now the question is, did Harry know? It's a haunting thought. Was the father of these children involved in the details of this plan? Or was he told, like the rest of the world, that everything was organic, natural, and simple? Sources say he was present at a handful of early meetings, but that his role was kept minimal. That most of the communication flowed through Marcus Anderson, an illegal intermediary. One insider, a former assistant at Archwell, recalls Harry asking, "Is everything locked down? Nobody can talk." At the time, it sounded like due diligence. But now